I remember coming up through the ranks of a small office equipment company and thinking my bosses were idiots. They didn't understand those of us who were out knocking on doors. They were always demanding reports, and they measured the wrong things. The number of calls, the number of callbacks, how many deals we might or might not close that month. It all seemed so short-sighted. And they acted like dictators, little dictators, supervisors, managers, even the president of that little company were all dictators. I always thought there should be a better way. And then moved into the church a number of years later, and I found that same dictator mindset was still present, except this time it was from the bishop or my district superintendent, or as I moved more towards the Christian alternative, there was elders, and there was always somebody to report to, and it always seemed like they wanted the pastor to be some kind of charismatic visionary that came from on high like Moses to drop down a sense of which way to go, as if Jesus didn't make it clear. Recently, I stumbled on an interesting topic from J.R. Woodward, and he uses a term that I absolutely love because we've been using it at the center where I'm the pastor, main storyteller, apostolic leader under the APEST continuum. And he uses this word PolyCentric Leadership, and it's defined very loosely, but there is a reality. It is this idea that there was once this hierarchical relationship of leadership where it's been passed down like little dictators. And then there was this great idea of flat leadership, which then became this idea that you just flatten the corporate structure. You still had people accountable, but really leadership was left to each little king or queen. Always an interesting time when you think about that. That we give so much power to people and then don't teach them how best to lead. Maybe that's the reason I always felt like the leader of whatever group I was part of really didn't know what they were doing. This is true of pastors and senior leaders in the church. I've had some great leadership in the past, some great people who taught me many things, but I don't know that I ever felt like I was on a team, that I was really working together with other folks. This is where the idea of polycentric leadership falls into place. Suzanne Morris put it this way: successful communities, even those with long traditions of organized community leadership, will continue to broaden the circles of leadership to create a system for the community that is neither centralized or decentralized, but rather polycentric. The polycentric view of community leadership assumes that there are many centers of leadership that interrelate. Instead of a solo approach to leadership, leadership is shared. It's not often that this can happen, though, is it? There's so much ego based on having power and prestige of a title. It scares me sometimes, especially when it's in the church. The beauty of polycentric leadership is that it includes a relational group of people who learn to share responsibility, engaging in both leading and following, giving time for each leader to be on mission. Polycentric leadership is the interrelation of people to one another. It's very Trinitarian, if you want to put it in those terms. It's interdependent, it's communal, it's relational, it's participatory, it's self-centering, self-surrendering, it's self-giving, It really is a leadership of humility where we're willing to look at one another's gifts and saying, you have something to offer me. I remember recently someone came up to me and said, well, you're the leader here? And I said, no, I'm just one of a leadership team we call APEST, our APEST Visionary Leadership Team. We've all been tested on this idea where we're either an apostolic, a prophetic, an evangelist, a shepherd, or a teacher. And when those five are working in concert with one another, when they all believe that the other person sitting at the table isn't striving for more, but striving for Christ, and that he is truly the leader of the church, then something powerful can happen. I was lucky enough to stumble into a group that really functions well together. We've had a few hiccups over the last 3.5 years as we've used this model of center leadership, but it has been powerful to see how once we all understand that we love one another and that we want to do the best for the people that we are in charge of, then everything seems to go well. Now, I'll admit, as an apostolic and a 7 on the Enneagram chart, that I want things to happen quickly. But in this polycentric leadership, sometimes it's a little slower. Decision-making tends to be slower on the front side. But as we share the leadership and we think about it from multiple angles, that's the beauty, I think, of APEST, is 5 different visions of the same idea create the right idea to move forward with. You know that you've discerned the issue or the topic in 5 different ways, and if everyone agrees that that's the way God is pointing us, then it makes it so much easier to move forward and easier to support one another as others ask why we're doing it that way, why that, why this. Polycentric leadership really does require mature believers who live and work and play together and minister over time together, so that this strong bond of mutual trust can take place, and that this love that I'm talking about that really does kind of circle around the leadership team can be, well, implemented in a way that is really inspiring. I think one way to think about polycentric leadership, and again, this was offered to me under a book called The Church as a Movement by J.R. Woodward and Dan White, is the idea of a player coach, that all of those who are in this central leadership team and those who have decision-making abilities are player coaches. That is, they know how the game is played. They've already been out there and they've done it. That's one of the reasons at Forge Chicago, I just love the idea that we are a team together. And that we've planted missional expressions and churches, full-blown Western-style churches, as well as multiple others, and coached people through it so that people know to whom they are being sent and how they are to move forward, and that they too should have a team around them to continue the expansion of the kingdom. You have to live into this. You have to cultivate this environment. This is not something that's natural by any stretch of the imagination for any leader. To honestly admit, I don't have all the answers, and I need 4 other people with me that I can trust who have different viewpoints, and those viewpoints aren't wrong, they're just different. It's awesome, actually. And the idea that we're all on the same mission together just makes the whole idea so much more beautiful when you see it play out. In our modern imagination, to be a better leader is to focus on the skills and capacities of the lead dog while finding ways to increase those skills. Now, polycentric leadership no longer goes down that road. No, it's more of an understanding that Christ is our leader. and that we need to only look to him and to understand the scriptures and what he wants us to do in the here and now by the way in which we approach life, the way in which we live life together, the way in which we make decisions. All of those things reflect his beautiful light on all of us as the people who have been redeemed by him. I honestly believe that God, the Creator God, has provided us this leadership style, this polycentric leadership, through Jesus' words from Ephesians 4, as a way for us to fully function as God would want us to function in this world. Christian leadership is never supposed to be a one-man band with one guy or gal up on the pulpit or in the executive position, and they're the ones who get to make the decision, and that everyone else is spectators. No. It's a game where everybody gets to play. The New Testament writers used the term diakonia, meaning servant or service, to identify people in leadership, that we are servant leaders. It's so biblical to think about polycentric leadership as the biblical way to move forward. I love how it's put within Mark 10:42-45, where Jesus is being asked, how do we move up in the ranks? And Jesus said, whoever wants to become the greatest among you must first be a servant. Whoever wants to be first must be a slave of all. For even the Son of Man did not come to be served, but to serve. Jesus is actually telling us, don't think of leadership the way the world thinks of leadership. Think of it differently. Hence the reason I am so enamored with polycentric leadership. Because it really does emulate the New Testament understanding of leadership, where there is humility, mutuality, diversity, accountability, gifting, and character. A perfect mosaic of voices working interdependently together. Working in agreement, and sometimes they'll be exhausting. I have to tell you that there are times when I just don't know what the problem with the other leaders are. I'm like, come on, let's go. But what has happened every time I feel that way, if we work through the issues and continue to talk about them, and we do, until we have real consensus and support of one another, then what I find to be the case is that the decisions we make have been for the best, not just good enough. The key, though, has been one of the struggling points for us is finding others who can kind of come beside us, people we can apprentice. I'm a big believer in apprenticeship model leadership, that there always should be somebody you're apprenticing to take your role, that you should not be stuck in a role within the missional expression, the church, the microchurch, for a lifetime. And that you should find somebody who you can, walk through life with, always talking to them about their relationships and how they're doing physically and mentally and spiritually, someone who you can develop along the way. I think that's so important, because it's that kind of accountability by giving and getting with another human being that actually, I think, helps this idea of polycentric leadership be not for just a single location for a special time, but a true way in which the organization we all love, the church, the ecclesia, the gathering of group of people, can move unencumbered by the world, but in ways that actually demonstrate a witness to Jesus Christ. Thanks for joining me about polycentric leadership, and I'll be back to talk to you about some other leadership principles very shortly. Thanks.